Over in Prague, over 150 powerful wizards battled it out to become the Eternal Weekend champion. Okay, welcome back, vintage gamers, to another Eternal Weekend Top 8 commentary video. I'm going to go through the coverage of Top 8 in Eternal Weekend Europe. This one is courtesy of Ultimate Guard Live and Impact Returns did the coverage of this event. So this is coverage I haven't seen yet, and I'm going to commentate over my live reaction. So you get to see what I'm thinking when I'm watching this coverage. It's going to be good practice for me because I do enjoy doing commentary. I just typically don't because I love to play in events that much more. So yeah, we're going to break right into this top 8 where we have some extremely heavy hitters. Stefan Schultz, Javier Dominguez, and Brian Koval are 3 names that immediately jump out to me as favorites for this top 8, as they were, this is a world champion. This is a multiple-time Eternal Weekend top 8er and winner, multiple-time Mox competitor, pro player. So you got lots of powerful names in this top 8. Also have Juan here, who is a person I actually played against in round 7 out of 8 in this event for the winning in for top 8 before being able to draw into the top 8. So lots of cool people in this top 8. So let's get right to it. We have a top 8. We've got a variety of decks, 2 mono white initiative decks, one of which is unpowered. There's a Dredge deck, 3 Lurrus decks, 1 being blue black and 2 being Esper, as well as a Jewel Shops and a Doomsday. So I would always say that Esper control favored up against Doomsday, powered initiative favored up against unpowered initiative. Dredge, I like Dredge over blue-black Lurrus, but blue-black Lurrus can be built in ways to beat Dredge. It's just, I think the average list is probably not going to do so. And then I like Esper Lurrus versus Jewel. So I don't know which matches we're going to get to watch. I'm going to be excited here along with you, and we'll see what Ultimate Guard has in store for us. So here it looks like we're going to start with Dredge. This is Samuel's Dredge list. Anything interesting to see here? Mental Misstep, 1 Mind Break Trap, 4 Noxious, all the chills. We're looking at Griefs. We're looking at Hollow Ones. Nothing too crazy. We have Vigors in the board, along with some Sickening Shoals and Contagion. So 4 creature removal spells, some traps. Nothing too out of the ordinary here. And then we have, do we have a list of who do we have Javier's list too? Here's Javier's list. Okay. Blue, black, tempo. 4 Bowmaster, 4 Frog, 1 Tameo. I do like a Tameo here. Bauble and Spellbomb, and 1 Mishra's Bauble. Vexing Bauble, Spellbomb, and Mishra's Bauble. Still has an Urza Saga. I think the Urza Saga in blue-black is definitely more acceptable than the Urza Saga in Esper, but both can totally play it. We are seeing 1 Undercity Sewers in the list with 1 basic island. I do think that's pretty nice. I think Surveil lands are a little bit underplayed in Vintage right now. I am seeing a Time Twister here to go with the Orcish Bowmaster to give you a nice little 1-2 combo punch. 7 forces with 3 negations, 2 main deck Stern Scoldings. Those are going to be dead here in the Dredge matchup, but I'm sure they were very good for Javier long-term versus all of the Lurrus decks in the tournament. Sideboard versus the Dredge deck, 3 Cages, a Tabernacle, and a Needle. Kind of on the lower side, but there is, of course, the Spellbomb in the main, along with the 5 Wasteland effects. So I would say this is a sideboard that is not strong enough to give you a favorable Dredge matchup. There's no Jailers in the sideboard. It's not like the white deck where you have Containment Priest. You do have the Cages, of course, but I'm not sure that this sideboard makes blue-black favored here against Dredge. So once again, I've skipped too far ahead. I am planning on playing this tournament here at 2 times speed and commenting over it. That seemed to work fairly well for the last event, and I'm going to mute the commentary, but I also highly recommend, if you want to check out the commentary for this event, including all of the Swiss rounds from earlier in the event. I know they have lots of very powerful wizards on commentary here, so make sure you check that out if you're interested as well. Let's begin. We've got a Bazaar. I'm not sure how many cards were kept here by Samuel. We'll have to see if we can put that together. But 3 cards away: Grief, Troll, Dredger, and play a hollow one, leaving us with 4 cards in hand. So with Bazaar and hollow one is 6 cards, discarding 3 cards after drawing 2 cards. So we were 8 cards. I don't know. Why am I doing this math? Looks like it was a keep on a large number of cards, though. I guess we can just count 4, 5, 6, 9 total cards. So we went, yeah. So we started with 7 here. Javier does have the Wasteland. That is key to this game, and has the Nihil Spellbomb in the opener. So the Wasteland is gone, and there's a Spellbomb, but there's a Noxious Revival to immediately put the Bazaar back on top. Natural draw of the Bazaar. Attack with the hollow one. Play Bazaar. This is a go first angle here. We've got a lot of dredging happening. Dredging one at a time. Okay. Narcomoeba and Creeping Chill. Triggers. Drain for 3. Narcomoeba into play. I mean, Javier has the best possible hand that Javier could really have, right? Maybe there's a combo-oriented hand with like turn 1 Bowmaster on the play into a Twister. Maybe that's a better one, but wow. Samuel finds Force for the Nihil Spellbomb. There's a Strip Mine as well. So Javier had Strip Mine, Wasteland, Nihil Spellbomb, and is still going to lose this game. That is the power of a Dredge 7. Javier helping us out on coverage here by showing us the visibly showing us the Ichrid triggers that Samuel probably verbally declared. Eating griefs as per normal. These Javier is just trying to speed this game up, and Javier has had enough. Javier is doing everything he can to die faster. But that's an amazing game, an amazing display of what this Dredge deck is capable of. That is a turn or a game 1 win through double Wasteland Nihil Spellbomb. Game 1 doesn't matter because we have the hollow one and we have the keep on 7, the Force on Spellbomb, just a Noxious Revival for the first Wasteland. Like, if you keep 7 cards with your Dredge deck, it's just going to be good things happening for you. Now, post board, opponent's deck should always get better, and this deck does get better. We have Cages and Tabernacle and Needle to go along with basically we saw all the main deck in game 1. But really, you know, maybe Javier is on the play in that game. It's enough to swing the tide, but without being on the play, keeping 7. For the opponent here, keep bringing in some removal spells might not even be necessary, considering there's no jailers or containment priests or anything like that. Force of Vigor is probably a card that's coming in as a 4 of to beat the Cages, Needles, Spell Bombs, those things. I would just consider bringing in Vigors. That might be it. All right, so what do we have from Javier here? Javier's got a Spell Bomb in hand. Opponent has a Serum Powder. Obviously, Javier's looking for Wasteland, Spell Bombs, that kind of thing. Probe, we're going to see exactly Samuel's Keep. Looks like it was a 7 cards after a Powder. Double Bazaar, Vigor, a black card, triple Bazaar, Vigor, Grave Troll, and a black card that I can't make out right now. That is a hell of a 7. So Javier gets a draw. Javier has a Spell Bomb and a Time Walk and a Lotus. Okay. So immediately goes for, okay, yeah. Black Lotus, Time Walk, Psychic Frog, attack, draw a card. Negation is an interesting one because Negation is not a card that I keep in the Dredge matchup for any deck. It is basically blank unless the opponent is casting Force of Vigor. And so maybe Javier has, oh wait, no, it's blank if my opponent is casting Force of Vigor. Justin, the whole point of your entire statement, the whole point of my entire statement is you can only cast Negation on Samuel's turn, and Samuel can only cast Vigor on your turn, which means you cannot cast those two things on the same turn. So I don't know what Negation is really doing versus Dredge, because you're not countering anything on their turn. The only things they cast on their own turn are Grief, Hollow one, Chalice of the Void. So negation is not countering any of those. And, they're not doing anything. You want to be able to counter, forces on your hate pieces and vigors on your hate pieces. So negation is an interesting card for Javier to leave in. It's possible, of course, that there are just not enough cards to take out that are bad. And force negation is a blue card that pitches to force of will. But I just saying I am surprised to see negation. And this isn't the first time I've seen a Lurrus player have negation in versus dredge. So it's possible it's just a mapping issue. Of course, negation can always get pitched to frog to deal extra damage. It looks like Javier's trying to figure out how much damage. And there we go. You see land, negation, attack for 3, extra damage, 4 total damage. Draw a card. Wasteland off the top. That's going to be really good. And he's going to hold the Nihil Spellbomb. We do know that Samuel has 3 Bazaars in hands. It looks like the black card was an Icarid. And there's the best dredger in the deck, the one of Restricted Golgari Gravetroll. So now Javier draws. Javier's going to get an attack in here with the frog, but maybe interested in Cruise is what it looks like. So attack first. He's interested in possibly, doing something pre-combat so that he can cruise. So he's going to put the Spellbomb on the stack to see if it gets forced, or maybe even just use the Spellbomb now so that he has 7 cards and can cruise. But they can't cruise because he just used the non-Wasteland mana. So it's just playing the Spellbomb, seeing if it's resolving, drawing a card, and Wastelanding the Bazaar. Sure. Now, the Icarid could bring back itself off of another Icarid. Or Samuel could just naturally dredge for turn off this troll because he has so many other Bazaars in hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Back to the hand. So now we have a Bazaar number 2 coming. Activates now. I don't know if there's any positives or negatives to activate now, but he does need to push through this Spellbomb. So there's a little bit of a cat and mouse game here where Samuel has known information of this Nihil Spellbomb in play, and has to make Javier use it at some point. And now Javier is going to have to use it on the next upkeep because he won't want this these Icarids coming into play. So what Samuel probably needs to do is put the Icarid triggers on the stack and pass priority and make Javier use the Spellbomb. We have a Force and a Twister and a Strip Mine. Okay. Javier has basically hit all of the non-cage cards that are good in the matchup and has a pretty reasonable clock here with a very large frog. And he's going to keep trying to push this frog here because he has no mana to cast these spells, but he does want to have Force up. I do think that Javier will just have to use this Spell Bomb for the Icarids, because if you let the Icarids come into play, well, maybe you could still just hit the Amalgams at end of turn, but he can order it. So it looks like he's gonna, let's see. Okay, Icarid triggers. He's gonna get the Icarids into play. He's gonna eat some things to put the Icarids in play. Makes sense. And it's just one delayed Amalgam trigger. At the end of turn, the sacrifice trigger for Icarid and the Amalgam trigger go on the stack at the same time, so they can be ordered. Okay, but this time there's a Creeping Shield trigger and an Archimedes trigger. So basically, Javier is going to wipe out the yard in response to those 2 triggers, but the 2 Icarids are still in play and will be able to come back later. That being said, Samuel has to rebuild this graveyard, and it doesn't look like it's enough because all these cards can get pitched to the Psychic Frog, and the Psychic Frog will attack for lethal. So, pretty well played game there by Javier. He is absolutely able to pitch the right number of cards and do the right things there in order to end the game as quickly as possible without any chances of Samuel winning. So, like, Samuel's hand was really, really strong, right? Had triple Bazaar, had dredgers and stuff. Didn't have counterspells for what it's worth, but Javier had just enough action there to go through. Though, to be fair, it was a Black Lotus Psychic Frog Time Walk, which is not normal gaming. Here we have a hollow one, and then a Wasteland on Bazaar. Looks like there might be a Tabernacle in the hand of Samuel. Hollow one comes in. Narcomoeba comes in off a natural dredge, and a second Bazaar in hand for Samuel. Dredge. Dredge a Akari Grave Troll. Hit a bunch of amalgams, but nothing to bring the amalgams into play until next turn where there's the Icarid. So, I mean, these dredge hands have been insane, right? These have been 7 card keeps with multiple Bazaars. Basically anything you could possibly want as the dredge player. So there's an Icarid, and there's some multiple amalgams. Javier is going to need to have a spell bomb here, or a cage. There is a Tabernacle, and a land or a spell bomb in hand, and a force. So just the Tabernacle. Hold on. Oh, I just hit this thing. Hopefully it wasn't too loud. I was so surprised by that. I needed to pause this really quickly. So is this acceptable? Because Javier has the option here of putting a spell bomb in play and wiping out the progress. He's only getting hit for 5, but 5 later on into Creeping Chills could be enough to make this game really problematic, right? Simply getting hit by this hollow one twice is going to happen either way, but it's going to make Creeping Chills lethal. So I'm wondering here, maybe Javier really wants Samuel to go all in onto the yard so that the Nihil Spellbomb next turn is more valuable with the activating the Bazaar and discarding the cards from hand. Maybe that's the line here, but I'm interested because I'm just not sure if Tabernacle before Spellbomb here is correct, but it might be. Let's find out. So we continue. You're right. You're right. So I'm sorry. So this is going to make it so that the second hollow one attack doesn't happen, and that way we're not in Creeping Chill range, because these hollow one and the Narcomoeba are going to have the Tabernacle Trigger on upkeep. Perfect. Okay, so like that's probably the thing that sticks out the most in my head is Javier wants to prevent going to 12 so that Creeping Chills are not lethal. So this is going to be a natural draw step for a natural dredge 3 for draw step after triggering the Icarid and the Amalgam, and then has the Wasteland, sideboard Wasteland for the Tabernacle 3, and then 2 Amalgams are going to stay in. So like, again, this could have possibly been prevented by playing the Spellbomb a turn earlier. Not saying it's right, but it would this situation would not have been occurring. We still got hit for 3 that turn by an Icarid anyways. Spellbomb resolved. Icarid triggers on the stack, and Samuel's making Javier choose whether to activate. And now Javier does activate this time with their Icarid on the stack. In response, dredges are happening. In response. And hit 1 chill in response. Down to 7. So now this is gone. And then Javier goes to 1. And I don't think there are outs from here. I think he's just dead. Yeah, he's dead. So this is a crucial point to reconsider here. I'm not sure I'll be able to go back super accurately, but this play on this turn is the most important play of the whole game. So there's 5 damage. There's 2 cards in Samuel's hand. What is the worst case scenario here that we're trying to avoid? If we play Soul Guide Lantern or Spellbomb here, use the Spellbomb to wipe the yard, we get hit for 5 to 11, and our opponent gets to rebuild from the 2 cards in hand. Do we know the 2 cards in hand? I guess that's a thing to consider here. There was a dredge, but I don't know if the same dredgers went back. It's a little hard to tell. So I'm not going to make a judgment on whether the play is correct or not, but it's certainly interesting that here you have the choice between playing a Tabernacle to wipe 5 power off the board or hitting this pretty well equipped graveyard here. There's a Golgari Grave Troll in this graveyard. There's an Icarid in this graveyard. Like, there's an Amalgam in this graveyard. This is quite the graveyard that I would be interested. We've hit the level here where I would be interested in spellbombing this yard. And it might be pretty hard to rebuild from this spot with 2 cards in hand, upkeep, activate, 3 cards in the thing, dredge for 5. You can still hit them next turn with this. It's harder for Samuel to keep a card like Wasteland if you wipe this yard here. So lots of things to think about here in our quarterfinals match, won by Dredge over the world champion Javier Dominguez in the quarterfinals. All right, so we see Samuel defeat world champion Javier Dominguez, and it looks like we're going to get our way towards another quarterfinals match. This one, Eternal Weekend champion Brian Koval up against Oscar on Jewel Shops. So this is a Jewel Shops list, Ancestral POs. We've got Manamo Island Odawara as lands, including a City of Traders, Voltaic Key. There's actually a Spicy Paradox engine in here, not a common thing, and only 3 Grim Monoliths, but a Vexing Bubble isn't going to be included. Sideboard, we have the creature plans of Masticore, Hold Breacher, but no Wormcoil engines. Negations, Dismembers, Cages, a couple notable things there. So not the most stock list here from Oscar. And then on Koval's side, we have, of course, this, let's call it Andreas Peterson, Echo Baron, Esper Luris deck, where we have pretty well-adjusted main board for Jewel. 3 Spell Pierces, 7 Forces, 4 Swords to Plowshares for any post-board Masticore plans. We have Twister Bowmaster, which is quite good. Lavinia is going to be quite good. I will be interested to see how this match goes because this looks like a very well set up deck for Esper versus Jewel. So let's see what happens here in the quarterfinal match. Let's begin. Here we get a nice little look in at Koval and Oscar. 6-card hand from Oscar, and then 6-card hand from Koval. Sapphire. Oh, wow. Sapphire, Tundra, turn 1 Lavinia. That's how you get it done. Saga from Oscar's side. Attack for 2. Lavinia, turn 1 is a restrictable play, considering how Bobble has already seen the axe. But this is a really nice, I want to pause just for a second, because this is a very, very nice counter play from Oscar. Like, with the Lavinia in play, he's not going to be able to do any combo-oriented things, but has the one of Urza Saga to give you this Ancient Tomb double construct plan B. And this was a big thing we were talking about pre-restriction of Urza Saga, was getting rid of this very stable plan B from Jewel might hurt the deck. Now, turns out that wasn't the case. But we were hoping that would be the case when Saga was restricted, because one of the biggest complaints of people playing against Jewel was, yeah, they had this all-in powerful, crazy one ring or coveted Jewel turn 1 and turn 2s, but they also, when things went badly, could just lean back on 4 Saga plus extremely large constructs to have this very powerful plan B. And people thought that maybe taking away that would make the deck a lot weaker. It hasn't really seemed to work out that way. But it is quite the nice play here up against the turn 1 Lavinia. Now, we got a construct. I assume we'll have another construct coming, and then we'll get some mana off of this Urza Saga, and then hopefully find some ways to build up some larger power on these constructs. Obviously, we can't play 0 drops into the Lavinia, but maybe we can hit some lands and play some 1-drop, keys and soul rings and stuff like that. That being said, Brian has already bought Luris on turn 2, and Luris comes down maybe turn 3, and then the Lavinia can start chump blocking these constructs and being able to be rebought, though maybe being able to be rebought is too slow, and it would let Oscar, rebuild too fast. We'll see. Oscar suits up with a key to make his constructs at 3/3, can give them vigilance and also make them unblockable. Could be useful in the future. Here you see 2 zeros, a Pio, a Tinker, and another PO. So next turn, with an Ancient Tomb coming down, our third land drop does allow us to play a Tinker. A Tinker would allow us to get a Time Vault and just go for infinite turns construct win. So Brian has to put together either a Wasteland to stop Oscar from having 3 lands, or a counterspell to prevent the Tinker from resolving. So even though we had the very, very powerful and restrictive turn 1 Lavinia from Brian, there is still hope in this game for Jewel, which is quite wild. A pass the turn here happens after no land drop from Brian, and I assume this is a pretty straightforward attack with 2 constructs into try to tinker for a win. Now, you do run the risk of giving away a possible attacking game plan here with, oh, wow, is that a Vexing Bauble? That is really strong, because the Vexing Bauble is going to... What? Wait, what? What? Hold on. What am I missing here? We're using the island? Didn't we reveal a Tinker? I mean, maybe we think that Brian has a Spell Pierce. So this looks like we're taking it a turn slower. We're going to play, and we're not going to use our Ancient Tombs. We're going to play a Vexing Bauble now to pump up our power to 4 for this attack. I mean, maybe we want to exhaust our attacking plan before we go all in on a Vault Key plan. That could be very, very reasonable. I was thinking maybe we wanted to attack for 6 and then go for Ancient Tomb, play a Vexing Bauble to turn off Force of Will, and then cast Tinker off of a construct for a Time Vault with 1 mana to spare for Vault Key. I thought that might be a pretty reasonable approach to this, but this is maybe a more conservative approach. Let's see how it goes. Negation on the Bauble has to happen, or this negation will just be turned off. It looks like Brian might still have another force in hand. We drew Bauble for turn, and I think Brian had Probe, so he might know that. Swords takes out a construct. So now there's just no hope in Oscar's attacking plan, and all we can rely on is a Tinker on the next turn. And Oscar can't even have counterspell backup anymore because of Luris. Because of Lavinia. So as long as Brian does have that Force of Will in hand, this game looks all locked up. It's now or never, slam a Tinker, and that's it. So the only thing that's super different here, that's an Otawara, I assume, or maybe it might be a Manamo. Can't exactly tell. So many new card arts. I don't really know what we're tanking about, because this just seems like the only possible line we have. Go? What am I missing? Am I missing something? What are we drawing to? What are we playing to? Why are we not casting? It's a Tinker, right? We have a construct. We can Tinker for a Time Vault. I must be missing something. I'm not sure. Is chat also... Oh, we have chat, right? Is chat saying anything? They're talking about attractions and stickers. God damn it. Chat, come on. Attractions, stickers, companions. Okay, well, all right. I was hoping chat would be talking about the game, but that was wrong. Okay, so I mean, we block with the construct? You just replays Lavinia? We're POing for 1? That's the plan? But what are we drawing to? Maybe we're trying to draw to Metamorph, maybe, to copy Lavinia and turn off forces? Is that what we're trying to do here? I'm trying to get myself in Oscar's spot and try to figure out what the thought process is. There's a workshop. We are up to 5 mana, so we actually are, have the ability to cast lots of spells now. The Lavinia, all of Lavinia is really doing is shutting off Force of Will, which is important, but not always the most end-all be-all. Brian has very skillfully hid his hand from me, so I'm not sure if there's a force in it right now, but I thought I had saw one earlier. But the biggest problem now for Oscar is he doesn't even have an artifact to tinker off of. Oh, whoa. What am I? Okay, now I understand. Now I understand part of what's going on here. Part of what's going on here is we are not even in game one. Expert commentary can't figure out what game we're in. This makes sense to me. So this is not pre-recorded. Basically, we went to the backup coverage match after the finishing of the other quarterfinals match, where Brian has won game one and then lost game two, and then on the play in game three has this Lavinia. So it looks like there's some other things happening here other than Manifold Key. We've got a Hull Breacher here. There does look like there's a force in Brian's hand for what it's worth. And I believe that force has been there the whole time. So even if we had gone for an early Tinker line, we would have been blown out as the Jewel player. But looks like we're just killing off Luris with the Hull Breacher. And then what? That a ring? Ring's a great draw. Ring is certainly a good draw. Force, pitching Frog. Now, Oscar still has Tinker here and can cast Tinker off of this key if he really wants to. The question is there anything worthwhile to Tinker for? I had thought we had opportunities to Tinker for Time Vault Key, but maybe that's not a possibility. And I mean, anymore it might not be because we don't have any artifacts, but... All right, here we finally cast Tinker, pitching away the key. Hard cast Mind Break Trap from this. Force gets Lavinia. Yeah, okay, and he's dead. Weird game. I would like to just quickly jump back to the earliest possible moment here where we have a Tinker, we have artifacts. So it's really just, can we... And we drew the best possible card in the entire deck. I believe that the Vexing Bauble here was the best possible card in the entire deck because it lets you Tinker for a Time Vault and a key and get another force out of the hand. So all of it really comes down to is how many cards are in Brian's hand here? Brainstorm. Because I think this was the best window Oscar had to winning the game was this Vexing Bauble turn. Because at this point, Brian has to have double counterspell. He needs to have a force for a Vexing Bauble and either another force or a Spell Pierce for the Time Vault. Or the Tinker for Time Vault, I should say. And now... we know there's a Frog and a Negation that get pitched. We know there's a Swords. Afterwards, we know there's a Swords that hits a Construct. Then can we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible Brian just has the double counter here. I'm trying to get a peek, but it's a little... I think that's the one thing I would have really liked here is that if we could have illuminated coverage. That is a Mind Break Trap, but a Mind Break Trap actually doesn't do anything here against two spell combination. So like we didn't have to use this island. We could have used an Ancient Tomb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total mana. Vexing Bauble to 4 mana. Tinker to 1 mana. 1 mana to untap. So we see the Swords. We saw maybe Mind Break Trap. So, oh yeah, there's a force. Okay, so there was a force. So even if we take my line and we go all in as the Jewel player, we still do lose. But I think it was the best moment. I think this was the moment I would have chosen. And just like that, Brian Koval wins the quarterfinals, and we go to semifinals. All right. On our way to the semifinals, we see that Mono White Initiative has beaten Mono White Initiative, but actually, unpowered Mono White Initiative has beaten powered Mono White Initiative. That's quite interesting. And then we see that Stefan on Doomsday has lost to Juan, who is playing Esper Control. So hopefully we get to see as much of these matchups as possible. And we go over here towards our first semifinal match, where we have Brian Koval up against Samuel on Dredge. So we get another matchup with Dredge, and let's check it out. All right, we have a starting hand here. We have a Grief. Grief is going to hit not the Wasteland. You can't hit the Wasteland. But Brian has kept a hand. This is funny because I'll pause it. This is a great example of understanding the matchup. Brian knows that this matchup in game one is extremely unfavored, and the ways he's going to win this matchup in game one involve a Wasteland. Wasteland is the most important card in the matchup. So Brian has kept a hand here that can't cast any of his other spells, but it can still Wasteland. So let's see how this plays out. As Samuel's side of the table, these negations don't matter. His cruise is only mattering later. Lavinia is annoying if it can get resolved because it will prevent you from casting spells, but at the point Lavinia is going to get resolved in this game, there's going to be no more spells being cast from Samuel's side, so Lavinia doesn't really matter. And the Frog is annoying, but I would maybe consider taking this Gataxian Probe and cutting off one draw from Brian. Let's see if Samuel agrees. I also don't know Samuel's hand, so there's some possibilities that some of the cards have different weights, but yeah, Gataxian Probe is taken. So Brian now does not have access to an extra draw to try to fix his hand. And we press on. We're probably going to see a Bazaar and an activation, and then what kind of dredgers do we have here? So Serum Powder, which is a dead card, Icarid, which is going to come back, and we have Dredger. Only a Dredge 3, so not the strongest set of cards. And here comes the Wasteland. Now, if Samuel has a Noxious Revival, you want to Noxious Revival on Brian's turn to play around the negation, but it looks like just a natural draw. And then another natural draw. Wow. All right. So not interested in dredging 3. Looks like Samuel is trying to find either a Noxious Revival or a Bazaar. That being said, Brian had found a land off the top immediately and followed by a Wasteland. This is basically a nightmare scenario here for Samuel. However, Samuel can always draw up to 8 cards and then start pitching a more powerful dredger for hand size. Looks like that's what's happening here. So there's an Orcish Bowmaster from Brian, which is actually castable off of Wasteland Underground Sea. And at the end of turn, Samuel discards a Golgari Grave Troll, the best dredger. So is that enough? Is a Golgari Grave Troll slow dredging every turn enough to beat Lurrus from this spot? It's possible. It's very possible because Brian still has not established a full mana base after keeping the risky hand of Wasteland Plus. So here's a Dredge 6, and then he's going to go to end step, clean up, and put the Golgari Grave Troll back in the yard. Now, there are an Icarid in this year. There is an Icarid and a Prize Amalgam, so these cards are going to start coming back now. Can Brian find reasonable cards before this gets out of control? It's just possible he just doesn't. Looks like just discarding negations. Here comes the Icarid. The Icarid triggers a delayed Prize Amalgam. We dredge 6. For our draw step, another Prized Amalgam. Icarid is going to attack. It's going to get blocked. And then the Prized Amalgam is going to come into play. He's going to clean up this. Did he declare the other Prized Amalgam? Doesn't look like it. I don't think Prized Amalgam is a May, though. But maybe you have to put the trigger on the stack. Because the second Prized Amalgam needs to come into play on Brian's end step. Looks like Brian has set himself up with a Cruise and then a Frog. Okay, so missed. Completely missed. So it looks like we missed the second Prized Amalgam here. Because this Prized Amalgam should definitely trigger off of this Prized Amalgam entering on end step. And it won't trigger until Brian's end step, but it looks like it was missed. Okay, so now Icarid on upkeep. Considering not Icariding, maybe? Can these beat a Frog is the question. It's possible with Creeping Chills this maybe does beat a Frog. Exiling a thing, triggering a Prized Amalgam, dredging 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Terrible dredges besides Creeping Chill. Lots of nonsense. I mean, not non-science, but just cards that don't do anything from this spot. We're looking for, Narcomoebas. We're looking for Creeping Chills, Prize Amalgams, Icarids, Dredgers. I mean, I guess you don't need Dredgers because you have Golgari Grave Troll every turn, so. I assume a bunch of cards are going to get pitched to the Psychic Frog to make sure this frog is killing and surviving against the Prized Amalgam. Yep. And 3 damage is going in, and that's Amalgam's coming into play. And once again, I think we're missing another Amalgam trigger targeting this Amalgam. Let me just make sure I'm not crazy. Anyone in chat? Missed it again. Okay, all right. This time, chat is paying attention to the game instead of talking about prizes and attractions. And it looks like Samuel is getting time twisted by Brian. Now, to be fair, I don't believe these prize amalgam mistriggers would have affected this game in any substantial way. I don't think they would have been enough to get Samuel the win here. But that being said, it was a mistriggers. I'm also kind of surprised that Samuel didn't start with a Dredge 3, natural Dredge 3 on the first Dredge and started to just natural draw until 7. But I'm not super in tune on the math on that one. It's absolutely possible that that is the correct play. And so it looks like Brian is going to squeeze out a Game 1 win against Dredge. That is completely wild, but sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes all you need is a single wasteland, and it's going to be enough. Not always, and maybe not even most of the time, but a lot of the time, this single wasteland can really change the tide here. And that's it. Brian takes over Game 1 here versus Dredge. Quite wild. All right, so we move on here to Game 2. Looks like we're skipping right to the action. There's already a powder, and it looks like maybe a keep after a powder. You can actually see over on the other side of the cameras here, you can see Thelio versus Juan in the other match. So here's an activation. We've got one Dredge 3, a Hollow 1, an Amalgam, and an Icarid. So a nice little Dredge start here. A Spell Bomb from Brian. Is there a counterspell? No. Are we going to power through the Spell Bomb? Let's see. So, interestingly, I like this a little bit. I like this spike here. So we're going to pause and talk about this because you saw Samuel say Icarid trigger on the stack, pass priority to Brian. Brian elects not to use the spell bomb, and so Samuel decides to resolve the Icarid trigger, getting rid of the Dredger, leaving an Amalgam in the yard. What this is going to do is put the Amalgam into play at the end of turn, and then Brian is going to have to decide if it's worth it to just get rid of just the Amalgam, or if this kind of 7 power setup is going to be too much. Looks like a natural draw for turn happened, and so these are ordered abilities. So Samuel is going to order it so that the Icarid is in play when the Amalgam comes into play, and then the Icarid will sack itself. And Brian is going to let all of that happen. So 7 free power from Samuel, playing a little bit of a Hollow Vine game plan here. And now he needs to figure out what he wants to do against this Spell Bomb. So I assume an activation of this Bazaar might be happening. Or maybe we're looking at using all these Sickening Shoals that are in the hand. That might be what's going on here. So let's see. Oh, now an activation of Bazaar is happening. I assume this is on the end step still. Pitching a Dredger and a Grief and a Shambling Shell. And then Brian is just going to eat that yard. 7 is going to come in. Looks like Samuel's going to wait till a combat here and maybe get Brian to pitch a bunch of cards before going in on some kind of removal activation, which I don't mind. Oh, immediately down to 6. Brian does not go in on a removal here. A Bazaar activation. Now, what is Samuel going to take? Because he's got access to removal. He could just maybe put like and he's got a wasteland for a white source. A white source is very crucial here because you need white to Swords to Plowshares, this hollow one. Without access to white, it gets a little more dicey. Down to 6 for Brian. Now, if that is an Icarid at the top of the yard, it's quite powerful. And here comes a second frog. mostly on blocking duty. It is an Icarid trigger. He's just going to bring back the Icarid and naturally draw. Very interesting. He's trying to hold all of his cards in hand, so he's not activating his Bazaar for card disadvantage. 2 cards get pitched to this. Samuel is saying, hey, stop that. Let's do this one at a time. Giving away that he does have something that he's looking at doing, but not really changing much of anything here. Brian still has to pitch the second one anyways to make it large enough. So Samuel is still considering the best timing window for... He has both a Contagion in hand and a Sickening Shoal, I believe. It looks like there's a I don't know if there's enough black cards because there's all these strip mines and stuff. So I don't know what the largest spell he can pitch to Sickening Shoal is. But Contagion is just... can't remember exactly. It's like 2-1 counters or something odd. And it looks like he's going to go at maybe the other frog. So like, yeah, 2 minus, they're minus something. Yeah, -2, -1 counters. Oh, he's going to put 1 on each. -2, -1 counter. Okay. I think that's what that is. Pitch another this. So this is now 3 counters on the frog. The frog is a 4/5. Is a 3. Is a 2/4. So that frog is going to live, and the other frog is going to die. And there's still a bunch of dudes in play. And then there's another wasteland on the tundra. So the remaining hand is just a Sickening Shoal with nothing to pitch to it. The frog is going to get in because Brian needs a tabernacle, I assume. And there's no tabernacle on the top of the library. And Brian actually loses this game. And that was quite an interesting game. That was a very interesting Dredge game where the Dredge player played the game almost like a Hollowvine player. Didn't really use the Dredge mechanic, just used the power of free creatures off of Bazaar. Cool game. I'm glad we got to see that game because that game was definitely one of the more interesting ones I've ever seen from this matchup. So this is another Golgari Grave Troll, high hand count keep with a Bazaar and a hollow one. A force is going to be pitched to force to counter the hollow one, and there is a wasteland in play for Brian. A grief is also happening after, and Brian is going to respond by cycling the Lorien Reveal to make sure he can get the land. And there's a strip mine, a time walk, and a dig in hand. So Brian kind of out of gas, but does have, of course, the answer to the first Bazaar. I suspect the grief will just take the dig through time to get rid of the full gas, and Brian is left with basically nothing except the ability to stop this first Bazaar. Time walks to start, and then wasteland, and then build up the mana base with the strip mine and pass the turn. Sure, that all makes sense to me. Definitely worth trying to build out that mana base with time walk there for wasting the Bazaar. And Samuel has to choose whether or not he wants to go Noxious Revival on this Bazaar or just play the second Bazaar out of his hand, because there's a second Bazaar in Samuel's hand. God bless. And then another grief. There's a Tabernacle has been drawn, but just land for Luris. Kind of an awkward spot, actually, because now that we have, Noxious Revival and Bazaar, and we have to activate this Bazaar to go through. This is really actually quite bad. I don't know if I like the grief there. But it ends up working out because Brian does go for the wasteland on the Bazaar. This gets put the Bazaar, and then we play the Bazaar. Activate the Bazaar. I don't like that grief. I think that grief play was too greedy. If we don't play the grief, we can just activate the Bazaar and pitch the Golgari Thug, and we could just hold the Noctis in hand. It would have been a lot better. I think that grief was just super, super greedy play. I don't really like it. Looks like it's all going to work out, though. We've got multiple Narcomoebas bringing back an Amalgam. They're all going to die to the Tabernacle that Samuel knows about. But eventually this is just going to overpower the Tabernacle. These two Icarids are going to come into play. I would have liked to see a Bizarre activation maybe in response. We're going to eat an Amalgam to do this. I guess that's fine. I guess this makes more sense because this means he can play against like a Containment Priest or something. No, I mean there's no Rav Trap in Ryan's board. Maybe it doesn't matter. We're just not activating our Bazaar at this point. We're just bringing back our Icarids every turn. Interesting. I'm not 100% sure what exactly is going on because we're not dredging. We're just going for Icarids every turn and making Brian do it. But don't we have access to Creeping Chills? Like, we see at least one Creeping Chill in the yard, so there are other Creeping Chills in the deck. So, and then Brian dies. Kind of an interesting game. I'm probably missing some key points here and towards like what is exactly playing around by this sequence. And I definitely didn't like that grief. But once again, Samuel is able to triumph over a very powerful wizard, beating both Javier Dominguez and Brian Koval and moving on to the finals. We also saw in the top corner there Esper Control by Juan winning his match and putting him in the finals as well. So we move on here towards the finals, and it looks like we have just a little tidbit here about the prizes. The foil Tinkers and Tinkers to top 32, the big prizes here. Very expensive cards and very sought after cards. So it looks like Unpowered Initiative was losing to Esper here as we move towards the finals. This is the same deck list we've seen the whole time. And it's going to be the same matchup, basically. Esper Luris deck versus this deck here. And here's the Esper Luris deck. Let's just take a quick peek in case it's any different from Brian's. There is a Saga in this list. There's a Dress Down that's not very good in this matchup. Spellbomb is in the main with one less Wasteland, actually. That's very important. This one looks a little bit closer to... It looks a little bit closer to the Max Gilmore winning list in comparison to what Brian has chosen to play. So this looks a little bit less looks a little less good in game one, where there's one less Wasteland, but still, pretty similar to what Brian was putting up. 4 Containment Priests on the board is very pivotal for this matchup. Is there anything else that's super interesting? There's a Needle and another Spellbomb and a Tabernacle. So Juan has a lot of cards here for Dredge. Definitely more than like the blue-black player in round 1. So we'll have to see if that's enough here to make a finals victory. Before we get going here, just fun facts. I actually play here against Juan in the round 7 of this tournament. Round 7, we played a win and in for top 8, where the winner would get to likely draw into top 8. I played it versus Juan, and it was a really fun match and a really cool match. Absolutely fun person to play with, and very cool story as Juan is at least partially blind. And so basically, when I played against Juan, I was like, oh man, that's so cool. How can I help you and I have the cleanest and easiest match of Magic possible? And what Juan had told me was, the best thing you can do for us is to say and announce every play out loud, so that Juan doesn't have to rely on what vision he can see, and he can vocally hear exactly what's going on in the match, which is perfectly acceptable for me. I'm a yapper. I'm going to be talking the whole time anyways. So just changing some of my yapping to announcing, mana taps and what I'm casting and what I'm doing with my cards. Not a problem. So definitely shout out to him. One of the many, many nice and fun opponents I had over the course of the last 3 weekends. I had no vintage opponents in a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. I played 4 different vintage events over 3 weekends in 3 different countries, and all of my opponents were just great people to play with. And I think it can't be understated. It's very important, in my opinion, that you are respectful and kind and produce a competitive match, but also a fun match. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing, in my opinion. There are better things you can do for money and competition. Magic the Gathering is a hobby and it's supposed to be fun. And even if the way we're engaging in our hobby is competition, it doesn't mean that you can't be a good sport and have a good time. So just a sidebar, just a tidbit. That's who I'm rooting for in this top 8. I'll be a little bit biased as we go into the final match of Eternal Weekend Europe. Okay, welcome to the finals of Eternal Weekend Europe. We have a Wasteland on the play for Juan up against Samuels. It looks like maybe a 4-card keep with 2 Bazaars. Wow. And another Golgari Grave Troll. I've seen many a Bazaar Golgari Grave Troll combination here from Samuel in this top 8. Lorien revealed getting cycled from the Wasteland, as we can use that Wasteland on the next turn. That's a crazy 4-card hand, though. The 4-card hand looked like it was it like Icarid Grave Troll Bazaar, or maybe it was like Icarid Imp Bazaar. Either way, a very nice 4-card start here. Now we are going to draw. And what are we going to do? Well, first thing that's first is that Bazaar has got to go. So the Bazaar is gone. And then how are we deploying? We've got a Sapphire. We know we have a Tundra as well as our land drop for turn. Do we have the classic Brian Koval turn 1 Lavinia? Doesn't seem like it. It looks like a go. And no Noxious Revival, untap, draw, and play the second Bazaar. Now, that's going to be a dagger. Juan's not going to want to have a second Bazaar here, but it is what it is. We're going to have to find another Wasteland. Unfortunate situation because there is actually 1 less Wasteland in Juan's deck compared to some list of Luris. Only 4 total Wasteland and Strip Mine effects. 1 Narcomoeba, 1 Creeping Chill on the total dredges of 11 because there was Stinkweed Imp and Golgari Grave Troll. Those are going to join the yard with the Shambling Shell, Drain for 3, and Narcomoeba into play. I'm seeing multiple Icarids, multiple prized amalgams. So 2 amalgams will come into play at end of turn here. And I think we're actually already at the point where it might be too hard for the Luris deck to even come back. 1 of the prized amalgams gets hit with the Swords of Plowshares. There needs to be another Wasteland in hand right now. And there is. Okay, beautiful. 2 Wastelands. So now it's just, can Juan stabilize the board and present a clock? That's going to be very tough to do. There are 2 Icarid triggers, and there are plenty of things to eat. Oh, there might be 3 Icarids. I missed one of the Icarids is not older borders here. So 3 Icarids just come straight in. Dredge 6 for the draw step. Hits a Creeping Chill. Creeping Chill brings Juan to 14. That's 29 to 14. And then attacks for 13. Putting Juan to 1. Look, there is another Swords on a prized amalgam, but without drawing a main deck spell bomb, it's all but over. 3 Icarids hit the bin. Did stabilize at 4, though. That's certainly something. But where we need to find immediately a way to clear this yard. Seems unlikely. 1 Icarid comes in. 2 Icarids come in. And 3 Icarids come in, eating all the dredgers from the yard. Just trying to present the most lethal attack, and it is a lethal attack. So Samuel takes game 1 in the Esper Control versus Dredge matchup. That's to be expected. Being able to steal wins in game 1 is not always the easiest thing for the Esper deck to do against Dredge. As we push forward here to game 2, we see at least a Powder losing the Grave Troll on the top of the screen. Fetch land from Juan. Gets a Tundra. And a spell bomb. Okay, strong start. Is there any counter magic from Samuel's side? We actually haven't seen Samuel have any counter magic at any point in these games. It feels like Samuel's been on the grief stuff. Oh, there's a misstep on the draw from from the Bazaar of Baghdad. That is a little unfortunate. Puts together a no dredger yard with Amalgam, Creeping Chill, and Icarid. Another 1-mana spell here from Juan. Oh, nope, just a cycle of a Lorien revealed. So this will be an interesting game to see if Samuel can fight through at least one spell bomb. We don't know what other kind of interaction Juan might have in his hand, but there's definitely things going on in Samuel's hand. We saw at least a contagion, a mental misstep. Is there going to be an activation in the upkeep in response to this Icarid? Again, this Icarid can't eat a Creeping Chill because a Creeping Chill is not a black creature. So the Icarid eating the Amalgam is not going to get the job done because that will mean the Amalgam won't come into play at the end step. So we can't play the game out in that Hollowvine style that we did against Brian. So it just looks like a natural draw for turn. And now Samuel really needs to figure out exactly how he wants to approach battling out against this Resolve Spellbomb. Not to mention the other 7 cards or so in Juan's hand here. Black Lotus is coming down. But now up another pass. So no land drop. A land drop here would have let Juan buy Luris, which would have been very important. Buying Luris, playing Luris with Spellbomb with Lotus, replaying Spellbombs would have been quite powerful. And it looks like Samuel might be activating his Bazaar in the end step of Juan. Trying to make sure here that we know exactly what's happening. I don't believe this Spellbomb would be cracked in response to an activation. So I don't know what we want to make out of this. But we definitely at least saw one pass the turn. And then we at least saw a Bazaar activation, but we don't exactly know when that Bazaar activation was. It would make sense for me if Samuel wants to push through a spell bomb. The best thing he can do is put a black creature in the yard. Putting a black creature in the yard is going to make it so the Icarid can come back. Oh, double Bazaar. Strip Mine is in hand. I don't know if there's a black creature, though. Let's see. So there is another Icarid. Okay, and 2 Noxious Revivals. So now the Icarid trigger is going to go on the stack, and Juan is going to be heavily incentivized to activate the... Okay. I was going to say heavily incentivized to activate the Nihil Spellbomb, but we have a Containment Priest from Juan. The Containment Priest is going to be immediately answered with a Contagion, pitching that, but it looks like maybe a hard cast Spell Pierce. Yep, I was going to say more negation. Spell Pierce is going to be countered by Mental Misstep. Okay. All right, so the Spell Pierce is countered by Mental Misstep. The Contagion kills the Containment Priest, and now there's still an Icarid trigger on the stack. I would crack. No, I would crack. I would absolutely crack, right? Like, you don't want this Amalgam into play. I think this is a totally reasonable opportunity to crack, eat a couple Icarids. Like, we already lost an Icarid to the Icarid. I would have liked to see... I mean, there's no Dredger in the yard, though, so it's just an Amalgam. If one has any Swords to Plowshares in hand, maybe one Amalgam is not the end of the world, and you can get away with no crack here. That could be fair. It's hard to say. You do have to think about what is possibly in one's hand. However, if something happens where, like, Samuel Wastelands the Tundra, and we already saw one miss a land drop, could be a problem. No play of the Strip Mine. Interesting. So there's an Amalgam in play. There's a Bazaar in play. There's a Spellbomb in play. There's no Dredgers in the yard. A second Tundra comes down. We have to consider maybe buying Luris. There's no reason to Nihil Spellbomb. So, pass the turn. End step, activate Bazaar. Sure. Draw 2. That's a Grief and a Shambling Shell. So finally a Dredger. Oh, there was also a Stinkweed Imp. So a Stinkweed Imp was also entering the yard. Okay. Here we go. Another Icarid comes back. Wow. I'm surprised. Because we do have the ability to even draw off the Nihil Spellbomb, but this is a very patient Nihil Spellbomb. Very interesting. 6 damage. Coming in. Maybe a Bowmaster. Okay. Yeah, but I don't think Samuel could have played into a Bowmaster here, so I would have liked to see maybe an activation. I mean, Samuel has taken lots of non-dredges in all the matches we've seen him in top 8. Has done a very interesting job of navigating possible different graveyard hate spells. So quite interesting. All right, so where did that orc army go? I'm a little confused. Oh, okay, it blocked. It blocked. Okay, sorry. So the Orcish Bowmaster pinged the Icarid, and 3 life was saved by blocking with the army. Reasonable. Very reasonable. And now an untap. What does Juan have? There is a swords in hand. 1 damage comes in with the Orcish Bowmaster, and a pass. An end step activation again, this time dredging, hitting an Icarid. There still needs to be another dredge or a draw. Here's a dredge 3. And then no more triggers. Oh, wait, that's a Creeping Chill. The Creeping Chill trigger as well. Okay, so there's a Creeping Chill and there's an Archamoeba. And now Juan has to choose. It does seem like it's time. So it looks like Nihil Spellbomb will be activated and Cantripping. So at end step, the graveyard goes away. None of those things come into play. Untap happens. Amalgam untaps and a Bazaar is untapped. Attack for 3. This gets Swords to Plowshared. Now 1916 and pass. There's a Demonic Tutor, there's a land, and there's a Force in hand. Oh, maybe there is not a land. We'll have to see. Okay, there's a land. Reminder, there's still a Luris. There's an attack for 1. I think Juan may have wanted there to not play the land so that he could be able to Demonic Tutor for a Wasteland. But this Demonic Tutor can just get a Containment Priest, and that might even be better. I think that was the hesitation on if he had actually wanted to play that land or not. So a card is tutored. I think it's likely to be a Containment Priest. That seems like it makes the most sense to me. And then from there, Containment Priest can cover all the bases. This Orcish Bowmaster is also covering Bazaar activations. It can, if Samuel activates a Bazaar, a bunch of orcs are coming into play. Here's the Containment Priest. Makes a ton of sense. And now Juan can just buy that Luris and keep pushing towards the end of the game. It looks like Samuel's going to take the opportunity here where Juan only has 1 card to kill this Containment Priest off, but I don't think that's a long-term plan. Like, this Luris is going to come back and bring back these Containment Priests, and that will be it. And there's also a Force of Will in the hand to protect. So Cat is being bought, and I think this game has the writing on the walls. Spellbomb Bowmaster combination is quite nice. So we're going to draw. And we're going to discard and we're going to get some orcs. Is there a dredger in this pile here? It almost doesn't really matter. Because it's going to take a significant amount of time to build up a play. A Bazaar is pitched. Okay, all right. He's just taking a peek and then probably conceding. Because there is... Oh, I guess, I mean, it would have got Luris, but there was a Force anyways. I guess that getting Luris might be enough, but you still have to do another Bazaar activation into the Bowmaster, and it seems like that wouldn't work out in the favor with no dredgers being put in the yard. But if there were dredgers put in the yard and then the Grief took a Luris, that might actually be enough. But there was, of course, the Force of Will back up there for the Grief to attack the Luris. So we are going to get a game 3 in this finals. Looks like we're like almost getting back to live here. All right. Here we go. Game 3, final match of Eternal Weekend Europe. Bazaar 7 card keep, possibly? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, sure looks like it. We've got another Golgari Grave Troll Bazaar of Baghdad combination from our friend Samuel here. There's an Icarid in the yard and a Golgari Grave Troll. Samuel is killing it. Lots of merchanting is happening at the Bazaar. For lots of dredgers. We've got a Mox Pearl, a fetch land, Do we have a turn 1 Lavinia or a turn 1 Containment Priest? Ooh, excuse me. Let's see. An Underground Sea enters the battlefield, and then there's options, right? There's Containment Priest, Lavinia, Frog, Bowmaster technically, but not anymore because there's a Dredger. A Lavinia. Turn 1 Lavinia, the Brian Koval special. Lavinia will mean that Samuel cannot really cast and resolve anything for the rest of the game. That's what Lavinia will mean. That being said, there's a Bazaar and a Golgari Grave Troll already in the yard, so it might not matter. A Vigor in response, because the Vigor would also just get countered later by the Lavinia. So yes, that's it. Okay. So the Lavinia is now stopping future spells from Samuel, but Samuel might not be casting very many spells for the rest of this game. Looks like there was no Dredger off the Dredge 6, so a natural draw, and then pitching a Stinkweed Imp and a Golgari Grave Troll. The Icarid now comes back, and then the Golgari Grave Troll that was pitched now becomes back into the yard and is dredged naturally for turn. 2, 3, 4, Creeping Chill. 5, Creeping Chill. All right. 2 Creeping Chills. That's such a powerful card. Putting 26 to 13. Icarid another 3. And then a second Bazaar. Dredging 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another Stinkweed Imp. Dredging 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hitting a Narcomoeba, which is going to trigger all these amalgams at end of turn. So again, Lavinia is good against Dredge, but not by itself. It needs to be backed up. And unfortunately for Juan here, Samuel was on the play, and boy, are these prized amalgams entering the battlefield. Now, I think if a Containment Priest gets cast here, it will 100% resolve, and it will stop these Icarids from winning the game. However, Juan is already at 10, and there's 7 power in play, including 2 3/3s. And one thing that Lavinia doesn't stop, and one thing Containment Priest doesn't stop, is Creeping Chills. And there should be at least 2 more Creeping Chills as well. So there's lots of things to be worried about here. A Nihil Spellbomb clearing the yard would be quite good, but there needs to be answers to the onboard threats. So I'm looking at some kind of combination here of Tabernacle plus Spellbomb, Tabernacle plus Priest. Here's a Spellbomb. Great. All right. The game might continue on from here. That's, of course, going to resolve because there is a Lavinia in play. And then the Spellbomb is going to immediately exile the Icarids, which I think is correct. So, no cards in yard, 2 Bazaars in play, 7 power. Let's see what happens. Attack for 7 to start. I can't imagine... Oh, I guess the Lavinia could theoretically block. But we're going to 3 here. So any Creeping Chill is going to be good enough. Oh, wow. Wasteland is amazing because Wasteland is going to protect against the Tabernacle, wiping the creatures off the board. So now what one has to do is individually remove these creatures from the board, Swords to Plowshares being the main way to do that. There is a Swords to Plowshares in hand, so we can block a Prized Amalgam, Swords of Prized Amalgam, and only take 1. But we need more. There needs to be more. Time Walk to start. Can't counter this, but could... Oh, we're going to activate in response. And then try to activate in response again. I guess. I don't know if this does anything, but it starts building the board out here. All right, so there's a Time Walk. It's resolving. And then there's a Lavinia getting a little rowdy. Is there no land? Okay, there's no land follow-up, I see. I see a Vexing Bauble, a Spell Pierce, a Frog, and a Sword. So the best thing that could have happened was Juan found a land. Because Juan finds a land, he gets to play Frog, and he gets to play Swords. And then you're stable, actually. You have blockers. You can eat the graveyard and fly. You might even play Frog over Swords here. Let's see. Blocking on the Amalgam and swordsing the Amalgam. No, yeah. You might play Frog over. Yeah. So this way, you're going to have to sacrifice your Lavinia, but you pitch 2 cards into Frog. Natural Dredge for turn hits a ton. I mean, this is unfortunately, this is too much. This looks like it'll just hit one of the chills and win. He's gonna use a million dredges, with all of his bizarre activations and just hit chills and win. Oh man, that's crazy. 2 Dark Amoebas come in. He's counting how many chills he has. 1, 2, 3. And look counting how many cards he has. And I think that's the writing on the walls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hits a creeping chill, and 1 is at 3. Hits a second creeping chill, and 1 is at -3. Yeah. And that's it. That's the game. And that's the match. And congratulations to Samuel, who has won Eternal Weekend Europe. Crazy. I was really happy. I love doing these, actually. These are really fun. Getting able to see all kinds of cool matches that I didn't get to see live in paper. I might even go back and check out some of this coverage during the day of different matches from over the course of the day. If you have maybe a match in particular that you watched during the top or the first 8 rounds that you think would be really good to see covered by me, let me know. If not, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this top 8 recoverage of the Eternal Weekend European event. Shout out, of course, to Ultimate Guard Live and Impact Returns, who did coverage of this event. Shout out to Andreas, Martin, and anyone else who was in the booth. I highly recommend checking out any of their live commentary with the sound on. Certainly some more powerful magicians than I, and you get to hear some other thoughts as well. Until then, more vintage content on this YouTube channel every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'll see you then.